Hello there. Welcome back to another episode of Unspoken Reality podcast. And in this episode, we are going to talk about application knowledge. This is the kind of knowledge that you need in order for you to take action. And in the previous episodes, we've been delving in the topic of improving and the steps to improvement. And a recap on the last episode, the steps of improvement, we basically talked about self-awareness, growth mindset. We talked about building strong foundations, networking, gaining experience, managing your time effectively, and seeking mentorship and also staying adaptable. And I just had a thing to add on growth mindset, that it's important for you to understand that you succeed by serving others. The growth mindset that I'm talking about here is a win-win, having a win-win mentality, that you don't have to win at the cost of someone else winning. So you become wealthy also by making others wealthy. That's the mindset that I want you to adopt when you're on your stages of improvement. So in this episode, basically, we are going to talk about gaining that knowledge that you need for you to advance, because knowledge is the gap between self-awareness, which self-awareness is the first step of improving. So knowledge is that intermediary between self-awareness and taking action, because you need to know where to apply what you know, right? And I somehow envy those people that seem to be informed in every aspect of life. Like, you can sit down with someone and they just, when whichever topic of discussion is at hand, they can disseminate knowledge, a depth of knowledge, not just shallow knowledge. For instance, talk about the M23 in the conflict there between DRC and Rwanda. Somebody can sit down and break it down to you, how it started, who are the perpetrators, who is going to benefit from all this, and you start to wonder, how did these people get to know all this? Because obviously, not obviously, I mean, that's something that perhaps I'm lacking in. As much as I'm a wide reader, I guess just having that general knowledge, I'm not sure where it stems from. Is it sitting down and reading a lot of books, or is it being active in the social media spaces, or is it watching a lot of documentaries? I can't really know, but it really fascinates me when someone can just talk about a certain topic widely. And in one sense, that's what we should aspire to have, in the sense of having the breadth of knowledge, that is, having knowledge that is wide, that you know a little about everything, that you can really fit in whichever conversation, because you understand a little bit of what is happening. And also having the depth of knowledge. This is mastery, this is expertise, that you can be able to show people your skills in something that only you know, or only a few of you know, because you have taken the time to dig deep for you to have that grasp and that in-depth understanding of a certain topic or a certain field. And so the purpose of this episode basically is just to outline the importance of application knowledge and how to go about it. Because for me, application knowledge, how I define it is that, how do I put it? It's knowledge that is practical. It's not just information. You know, there's a difference between information and knowledge. And at this point in time, this era, based on all the technological advancement, the main challenge that we have is knowing what kind of information to consume and which one is beneficial for you, because we have a lot of information out there on the internet, and you every now and then there are ads, there are these shorts and shorts. You want to consume whichever information is just on your beck and call. and it's important for you to filter out the right kind of information that you need. And my what I'm submitting to you at this point in time is that the information that you need to filter out is the one that you are going to apply. Yes, it's important for you to carve out time for entertainment and for nonsensical stuff that don't have much meaning to you, but a majority of that time should be carved out to acquire application knowledge that you can put to use. I'm a bit concerned that this episode I might be all over the place because I haven't really curated the structure, or rather the flow of thoughts that I will engage you in, but I've jotted something down that perhaps could help us to squeeze knowledge out of this episode. So understand that education is learning more and more about a little, and a little about a lot more. Basically, what this is saying is having that breadth and depth of knowledge. When you are pursuing something, what do you know about it and what do you need to know? Remember, we have mentioned time and time again in this aspect and space of improvement that the first stage and the first step that you need to take is self-awareness, reflecting on your current state and understanding what you need in order to advance. And what you need, most of the time, if not all, is knowledge. So how do you then approach application knowledge? How do you acquire knowledge that you're going to use in order to attain something or in order to advance and improve? Education, by definition, is the art of acquiring knowledge. It is the process of learning. And knowledge can be defined as the information that is acquired through learning, because knowledge is structured information that can be useful. When you're talking about a certain topic, the information, if it's structured in a way that is concise, that is clear, and is informative, then by definition you can say that's knowledge. And then wisdom is the ability to apply knowledge effectively and thoughtfully. So an analogy that I got here is education is the process of learning about construction. That is in the case of building a house. Education is learning about construction, learning about the materials and the design. And then knowledge is understanding the blueprints, the building codes, the construction techniques. And then lastly, wisdom is the ability to use that knowledge to build a strong, functional, and beautiful house that meets the needs of its inhabitants. So education and knowledge are very essential, but it is wisdom that allows us to make the most of what we have learned. Now, another thing to look at is when we go to school, the misconception that we have about school is that school is supposed to give us the wisdom. I'd say school actually gives us knowledge, but at this point in time, it has really failed to give us information that is structured. Most of our lecturers are all over the place. They cannot give you something of substance that you can call it knowledge. Most of the time, it's general information, or it's information that you cannot even apply immediately. You have to go and still refine it on your own. And simply put, when we are talking about now knowledge that you can apply in order to improve, there is a step and there is an approach that you can take for you to achieve what it is that you need to achieve. There is this philosopher called Seneca that said the purpose of knowledge is action. So if you are learning and you are not putting that knowledge to use, it's going to be a waste. Remember, there is something called the forgetting curve. That's something that you have learned, you forget half of it. Is it a day later or is it within a week? I don't recall. Case in point here. So if you don't put something into use, you are going to forget it. And so it's important to know what knowledge is it that you need to consume and which one is important. Filter out the knowledge that you need at a particular stage in time. I'm going to use a certain example to explain it to you based on how you filter things out. In cooking, there's something we call recipes and there's something we call ingredients. Ingredients make up a recipe, and a recipe is made up of certain ingredients. But you're looking at recipe as the whole thing that makes a dish. But ingredients are components of a dish. Now, say you want to become a chef. There is this approach that you can take. You can either learn recipes, in which I believe there are millions of recipes when you want to look at all the kind of dishes available in the world. We have the Italian dishes, we have the Chinese food and all that. These are different recipes by definition, right? Maybe I might be wrong by saying there are a million, but there are many. So if you want to, and also when it comes to ingredients are, I can say they are specific because we have vegetables, we have salads. No, salad is made from vegetables. What is it? Aside from vegetables, we have spices, and there are a finite number of spices that are used in all the dishes. You can find some that are recurrent, and the difference is how they are prepared. So when it comes to ingredients, you can learn about several ingredients, say tomatoes, say onions, say what is it, oil, water, what amount do you put in what dish. So the approach that one can take is, I can either try to learn as many dishes, as many recipes there are to learn in the world, hoping that by the time I'm called to prepare something, I can just recall one recipe from memory and use that. Another approach will be trying to understand these components, what makes up the recipe, ingredients. And so you try to understand how, when I cook tomato a certain way, how will it come out? When I cook, is it potatoes? Can I boil it? Can I fry it? You now understanding the component. And when you need to understand a certain dish, you just go and look up what are the ingredients and then how do you prepare them. You go and look at the manual, for the lack of a better word. So what point am I trying to drive across? This is the point. Recipes by definition are going to take you a while to memorize all the dishes, but when you understand the components, it's going to be much easier, so that when you are supposed to make a certain recipe, even if you have never made it before, by simply understanding the components that make it, you are going to be able to make that recipe. It's going to be easier for you because you have that foundation. This one can be alluded to the relationship between skeleton and the flesh. Skeleton is the ingredient in this case. It's what holds up the flesh, the recipe. So most people, in trying to learn something, trying to learn a skill, trying to learn a certain concept, they look at the recipe instead of looking at the ingredient. They skip the foundation, which is the skeleton. And by this, you can say, based on what I'm thinking, is that school aims to teach us some recipes, but it fails to teach us some very important ingredients. So you realize that when you are in a position whereby you are required to use a certain skill, you realize that you don't have the foundational aspect of it, which you missed and you should have been taught in school. Remember, an ingredient is not the complete dish, but it's what the complete dish is built upon. And so, back to what I had said earlier, the first step to knowledge is awareness. What don't I know? That reminds me of the four types of people: the one that knows they know, the one that knows they don't know, the ones that don't know they know, and then the ones that don't know they don't know. So it's important for you to be in the second category where you know you don't know. So it's important to know what you don't know and then work towards knowing. And so the first level being the level of awareness, the first step to acquiring knowledge. First, you should know that something exists and then break it down. What is it that exists? Why does it exist? That is, for what purpose was it invented? For what purpose do you need a certain knowledge? How does it exist? How is it applied in different areas? And then if you are now more curious, you can go to the when and where does it exist. That is basically, when did this knowledge come to be? In linguistic, perhaps in study of is it called phonetics and whatnot, study of language, there are certain use cases of different words that we normally use in modern times, that when you study its root, you will understand how it came to be and how the people of that time used that certain word. And I call this the first appearance principle, that when you're studying something or you're researching something, perhaps could be philosophical or not, the first appearance helps you to understand the use case. At what point in time was this thing first used? How was it used then, from then henceforth? Understand? So, yeah, knowing that something exists is the first step to knowledge. I will give you an example, a technical example that will help you to break it down and to understand it clearly. There is something in programming. It's an algorithm, I believe so. I even don't know much about it, but it's an algorithm called APIs. I've forgotten what it is in full. Now, to break it down in relation to knowing that something exists, we all know now, based on what I've said, we all know that there's an algorithm called APIs. Now, what is an API and when do you need an API? So an API is an algorithm that helps one application, mobile, could be website, could be desktop application, to communicate with another application. Case in point, when you have an e-commerce and you want people to pay through your app, we know the mode of payment can either be through PayPal or through M-Pesa for us here in Kenya. And so, because you do not have the access to M-Pesa's back end code and all that data, you need an API. Now, what an API does is it facilitates that communication to M-Pesa, telling M-Pesa that there is a payment that needs to be done in this website or in this application. So you will see that when you click buy, most of the time, if not all, I believe it's all of the time, if you have integrated M-Pesa into your app, is that it just brings the prompt for you to key in your password, your PIN code. That's the only thing. So what has facilitated that communication? It's what we call an API. I'm not well versed in it. I don't know how it works. But I know the first two, what it is. It's an algorithm that facilitates communication between two applications or more. And the second one, why it exists. It exists to enable cashless transactions. So that in itself is enough, depending on where you are in your progress of improvement. So, for instance, if you are learning how to code, you're learning programming, most people find it hard because they are overwhelmed with the vastness of information that they need to have. Most people think that expert programmers have everything in their mind. They have memorized everything in relation to that language, but that's not the case actually. Most expert programmers are just aware. They have a certain level of awareness higher than a beginner programmer. So they know what to look for and what to search for in the internet. So now, assuming at the level that I'm in, when I reach to that place whereby I'll need to integrate my application with APIs, that's then when I will go to the how part. How then do I need to put this? And you see here, the when and the where doesn't really matter. When it existed, but another aspect could be when to use it, and we have already established that a while ago. So when I'll need to use it, that's when I will go and study deeper about it and how I can integrate it in my app. And basically, what this is the key point of application knowledge is what we call just in time learning, that you learn when you need it, not just in case you need it. This is the approach that we normally take when it comes to scrolling shorts on TikTok and YouTube and whatnot, binge watching. A major part of it is entertainment, the dopamine and all that. I do not refute that by any chance. But another aspect of it is most people consume this content and all this information because they feel that they might need it. So you're not supposed to learn something when just in case you need it. No, you're supposed to learn it when you need it. That's now application knowledge. That, oh, I am supposed to prepare a certain dish for certain group of people. Do I know how to make it? Then you go and research. Planning is also important. And that's why you can curate a structure, you can curate a curriculum. Say you want to learn programming, go and look for a structure online so that you are not overwhelmed with what it is, with the vastness of information there is in programming. This is just an example. It can be any other skill that you feel you need to learn to propel you forward. Try and curate a structure and then follow that structure. Don't jump to a higher level information that you're not going to use immediately. And now, how do you apply this knowledge, this application knowledge, practical knowledge? You do so by practicing. You have to practice. Otherwise, you'll still forget regardless of whether you use it. Because there is nothing wrong, by the way, with learning something that you're going to use one time, as long as that application facilitated another stage. Understand? And so, as we had said, wisdom is the ability to apply knowledge effectively and thoughtfully. This episode is not going to be a long one, but I'm recording this one to necessitate the importance of application knowledge in propelling you and in improving on all the 5 aspects that we talked about: spiritual, mental, physical, social, financial. How do you improve in those areas? You need knowledge. What kind of knowledge do you need? Application knowledge. Knowledge that at least you apply on a day-to-day basis, if not when you need it. And so, to sum this all up, there is something called the law of diminishing intent. The law of diminishing intent, basically, I'm not sure if I can quote it correctly, but just to paraphrase, this basically means that when you intend to do something, in this case, let's say learn a certain skill, you intend to do that, but you prolong the period between when you had that intention and when you actually do it, that intention is going to diminish over time. As a function of time, it will diminish. And so the parting shot here is this: reduce the distance between acquiring new information and applying. So don't just go on an information spree, trying to get as much as possible, you will be overwhelmed because there are many self-help books. There are a lot of books on money. There are a lot of books on the finances, on social aspect, trying to be a good speaker, being a good communication. There is a lot of information. And so it's important for you to reduce the distance between acquiring new information and applying that information. And how do you do that? You do that by curating a structure, curating a curriculum that you are going to follow. And then you also do that by knowing which knowledge is application knowledge and which one is just general knowledge. And I hope that this episode helps you to take that step towards action, because we are not just talking about improvement, we are talking about self-awareness and then taking the step towards doing what you need to do in order to improve. Yeah, so that's it from me for this episode. I hope to catch you in the next one. So until then, shalom.